So the House and the Senate now have voted to block the Biden administration's attempt to incorporate ESG and the principles behind it into an asset manager's fiduciary duties. Now, a lot of this is in the weeds of investing and of the law, but basically what you need to understand is an asset manager has a legal duty to the best of their knowledge, make the decisions on behalf of their investors that are in the investor's financial interest. And so what this means is that an asset manager is not supposed to engage in activist investing if they're a fiduciary. They can do that if the client directs them to do that, but if the client just hands them their money and says, hey, you need to do what's best for me, I'm entrusting you with my savings so that you can grow them, the duty of the fiduciary is to act in a way, to the best of their knowledge, that will maximize the profit and return on investment for their investors. And so ESG, which stands for Environmental, Social, and Governance, is a manifestation of woke capital, and it's an attempt at slowly integrating wokeness into investing. And so we have these ESG mutual funds as well as ETFs that you as an individual can invest in if you want to invest based on wokeness rather than some other principle. ESG funds are instruments that you can use to invest in woke corporations. Those are the only companies that appear in these ESG funds. And so the criteria for choosing companies to be in these, like I said, is based on how woke they are, not based on how profitable they are. And so the adoption of ESG has been limited because most people, most rational Americans who have money to invest, want to invest their money to maximize growth. Of course, maximize growth, accounting for their risk tolerance and blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to get into all that. So anyway, fast forward to this Labor Department rule, which would apply, I guess, to people managing like 401ks and stuff. That's why it'd be through the Labor Department. It's for workers' retirement funds. They want to allow asset managers to consider ESG as a part of their fiduciary duty. So essentially, they want to make it so that it is their legal duty to invest in companies based on how woke they are, rather than how profitable they are, or how good of a rate of return they are, or how stable they are. And the obvious goal here is to divert investment away from non-woke companies and fund exclusively woke companies. And so that essentially, if you're not woke, you're not going to get any investor money. If you're not woke, your stock price is going to zero. Regardless of whether or not you are a profitable company that pays good dividends or has a decent, stable rate of return, rate of growth. And so in one fell swoop, this rule is poised to completely wokeify the asset management industry. Now, asset managers are already very woke. Everyone thinks of Vanguard, BlackRock, and State Street as pillars of woke capital, particularly BlackRock, although, frankly, I don't think that's particularly deserved. I think BlackRock is as bad as everybody else. I do think that they just have the scariest sounding name. Vanguard also sounds pretty scary. They sound like they could be, a supervillain league. But State Street, they get mentioned the least because I think they just have a very, very, boring name. I mean, it's State Street Global Advisors because they're financial advisors and their office is on State Street. It's pretty boring. But BlackRock, that sounds like a Blackwater. It sounds like they could be a mercenary group. But anyway, BlackRock has, along with Vanguard, been pushing ESG very heavily. They created these ESG ETFs, and they would love if fiduciaries now could start diverting their clients without their knowledge into ESG funds, purely for the sake of just going woke. Because like I said, right now, if you've got a fiduciary, and let's say you just tell them, hey, I just want a decent rate of return or something, nothing fancy, just put me in an index fund or whatever. If that's what you tell your asset manager, and then they go and put you in an ESG fund, they, I think, would be liable for the amount of money that you didn't make because you were in that ESG fund, if that makes sense, because they went against your interests, because your interest was in making money, and they put you in an ESG fund that was objectively a worse investment if you're looking at it from a risk-adjusted basis. Like, in all likelihood, these ESG funds will be just as risky as any other index fund, but probably will not have as great a return. But if this rule passes, which it's a pretty substantial step that Congress went and overturned this anyway. Both the House and the Senate, the Democrat-controlled Senate, 2 Democrats voted to overturn this rule. Biden can veto it, so Congress really doesn't have the authority to overturn these regulatory changes. It's kind of backwards. They don't have the authority. Congress isn't making the laws. The bureaucracy makes the laws, and then Congress has to try and repeal it, and then the president can veto the repeal and essentially just keep his own rule that he created. So we have a very backward authoritarian system in this country. We do not have a legislative branch. I wish more people understood that. And so I think because there's not enough interest around this, Biden will end up vetoing it, even though both the House and the Senate have voted to overturn this rule. Because I don't think that he's going to face a lot of blowback for vetoing it. And so in time, what the goal will be, like I said, is to move all the 401k money, all of the passive investment capital that so many, just average middle-class workers have that they put away. Woke capital is going to move all of that money into exclusively woke companies. And any company that's not woke just won't get any investment money. So, with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.